Yeah, thought the screen had frozen, but I've literally just come across an interesting story in the Daily Mirror, and it's this. If you recognize that image, it's because it's one of the most famous pictures ever taken by Life magazine. Um, and it was taken on VJ Day 1945 in Times Square, New York City. And it was taken by um, Alfred Eisenstadt, and it was of a sailor kissing Greta Zimmer Friedman. She passed away 3 years ago at the age of 92. She was a nurse, and for a long time it was unknown who the sailor was. Several men came forward, but the man who most likely was the person, and who certainly the Daily Mirror considers as such, was one George Mendonsa. And Life magazine done an interview with him. Well, it may have been CNN, I can't remember, but they done an interview with him, and he insists that it was him, based on the size of his hands, based on a scar on his head. So that's a famous photograph, and that's George Mendonça. So he died a few days ago at the age of 95. Now, this is what I want to discuss. For a long time, that photograph has been seen as iconic, one of the iconic images of World War II, much like the flag being raised on Iwo Jima or the Soviet troops waving the flag over Berlin following the Battle of Berlin. There are a handful of photos from World War II that are very famous, and that's one of them. But apparently, there's a statue, a large statue in Sarasota, California, not Sarasota, New York. I think it's Sarasota, California, of this famous kiss on Times Square. And apparently, in the last week, whether it's because this guy has passed away or whether it was just a coincidence, it's been graffitied with a Me Too um, tag. Now, on a lot of things like this, I think it's a case of I think a lot of people would have a knee jerk reaction, and they'll say things like, "Oh, people are being snowflakes," or "People are, you can't compare today's standards to the past," and so on. Actually, Time magazine said basically what this was a very public sexual assault. Now, by Mendonca's own admission, he was going around Times Square that day. Everyone was in high spirits. It was the end of the deadliest war in human history. He was going around Times Square kissing random girls, kissing random nurses. And his logic for it was that he had seen these women providing aid to his wounded comrades. And I suppose in some way he saw that as showing his gratitude. But I have to say, I've always thought there was something a bit dodgy about that photograph, and I'll just show you. If you look at it, the posture that she's in is clearly not comfortable. Um, he certainly didn't ask her permission. By his own admission, he grabbed her and kissed her in that way. She herself said that she never thought it was romantic, and everyone was doing it, but she never saw it as a romantic thing. I have to say, I think Me Too has its negative side without question, but really, when you look at that and you really consider the facts, essentially it is sexual assault. And just because the guy was a war hero doesn't change that fact. I mean, when you think about it, he grabbed a woman that he didn't know in public and forced a kiss on her. Now, I don't think that is something to be celebrated. It's a famous photograph, and it's a very strong photograph, but I do think context matters, and maybe that statue shouldn't be there. I don't know. Maybe it is inappropriate. But I would say there will be some who have a knee jerk reaction and say, oh, it's all these rabid feminists, they're blah, blah, blah. Well, look, there's aspects of Me Too I really don't like. However, let's call a spade a spade. This guy Mendonsa struck me as a bit. He was a bit of a tough guy. He's from, I believe, he's from New York, but he's, you know, assault is assault, and if it's without permission, then by definition it's sexual assault. No, it's not like he raped her or something. It's not that bad, but I don't think that you should do something like that without a woman's permission, and that's not about. And we're talking 1945. We're not talking the Dark Ages. This isn't that long ago. And yes, it may be that there was more permissiveness back then, i.e., this sort of thing people turned a blind eye to, like, oh, it was just high spirits. But I'd like to know what her perspective was. She said it wasn't romantic. I don't know if she ever said that she was uncomfortable with it. Maybe, again, she was a product of her generation. But put it this way, today that certainly wouldn't be tolerated, and I don't think it should be. I don't think it should be. So those who say, oh, he's I think before people have this knee-jerk defense of it, they should really consider this a little bit, because essentially what he done was, forced to kiss on a stranger. Not cool, and maybe it shouldn't be celebrated. It's a famous photograph, it's an iconic photograph, and it will always be that. But that's not celebrated. I mean, the Daily Mirror had absolutely no reference to the controversy around it, none whatsoever, and I think they should have done that. So I just think there should be more honesty about this and about the context in which it was in, and maybe that shouldn't be celebrated. So I think it should be celebrated as a famous photograph, as an iconic photograph, but let's not just whitewash the context of this, which is that, this guy was going around. I mean, his wife was in the background, and apparently she used to get annoyed with people suggesting that it was disrespectful to her. So she was defensive of his actions. But, did he stop to see if the nurses that he was kissing had boyfriends? Did he stop to ask their permission? So, what he was doing was a strange way to show gratitude, I think. Let me know your thoughts. I mean, on one hand, you could see him as a Casanova. On the other hand, I think he was going too far. And the thing about that photograph is many people assume it's a romantic couple. That's why it's a problem. Many people assume that's a romantic couple on VJ Day. Actually, no, they're total strangers. And if you look, it's quite rough the way he's grabbed her. So I don't know. I'm not sure it's something that should be necessarily celebrated.